Having a child is like having your heart walking about out in the open. A child is a tiny anvil on which you beat your ego into new and unrecognized shapes. Before the birth of my first child, I had collected all of this advice, but I was not prepared. When the nurse put girl child Petersen in my arms, we didn't even have a name for her because for 9 months, 11 days, and 32 hours, we thought we were going to have a boy child. Someone had misread an ultrasound. So I went home, collected a bunch of names, and came in, and she was sitting there fussing, and I would read through the names. And whenever I got to the name Sierra, she would go quiet. And I did this 3 times. Sierra, quiet. And then I did it for her middle name, Victoria, quiet. She knew exactly who she was, and she gave us this look that was sort of, any questions? She came out of the womb knowing who she was. And 4 years later, her brother was born. He looked around, saw this person almost his size, who had had our undivided attention for 4 years, and she knew exactly how to wrap us around her finger, and he would take his cue from her. What no one had told me about was the father ego that arrived with the birth of the child. Suddenly, I wanted this child to follow in my footsteps. I wanted her to learn the family business, or at least the wisdom I had learned in my life. I'm a writer, so they got to watch me at work. I don't think we went on a vacation that I didn't turn into an article. And they got used to seeing their name in print. My daughter had problems with it. She said, I feel like I grew up in a family with an imaginary sister. There was the real Sierra, and then there was the Sierra you wrote about. And I said, hey, I love you both. Her brother Connor had a much more pragmatic approach. If I used something he said or thought he said, he would just say, 10%. Here's an example of how it worked. When Sierra went on a college tour, we were at the University of California, Berkeley, and we're walking around. I think Connor then was like 12 or 13. We're walking around campus, and Connor stops, and I said, I know this place. We had never been to California. He said, around that corner is an octagonal ticket booth, and if you follow that railing up those stairs, you'll get to the plaza, and somewhere there should be people around here with arrows pointing at their heads. You get to ask them questions. What the fuck? And he looks at us, he goes, it's a level in my Tony Hawk skateboard video game. And that was the opening paragraph of an article for the New York Times, and he got 10%. Now, I turned 70 last March, and I had dinner with my kids, and I said, I don't understand where I failed. You guys fell so far from the tree. Neither of you are writers. My daughter is a paleoclimatologist, geochemist, and my son is a computer scientist, programmer. And my daughter said, Dad, I write, but when I write, the sentence contains a fact that can be replicated by any scientist on the planet. And before I can uncover that fact, I have to write grant applications and persuade my peers that the question I am asking is worth answering and that the method I describe might arrive at an answer. I'm a writer. My son says, Dad, I'm a programmer. I write code. And because of something I write, when you press this button, your character will raise its arm and fire a weapon at its opponent and turn him into digital dust. Has any sentence you've ever written been able to do that? Children are tiny anvils, and they grow up to be bigger anvils. Oh.